All right, so I am Mrs. Wallace. I've been teaching for 22 years here in the same high school in Winston-Salem. These are just a few facts about me. So I'm a teaching fellows graduate of the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. I then went back and did my master's degree in 2009, and I'm currently a doctoral candidate at Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I've been at the same high school for 22 years, as I mentioned a while ago, and absolutely love where I am. The top picture is my husband and my two kids. My daughter is 18 and my son is 16. And this is at an escape room that we did. I don't know if y'all have anything like that there, but it's a room full of puzzles, and you have to solve them in a certain amount of time in order to get out of the room. And so at the bottom are my two fur babies. The white one is Luna. She is a Maremma, which is an Italian sheepdog. And then the spotted one laying on her is Chessie, and she is a lab healer mix. My husband rather works for NASCAR. I don't know if any of you are race fans, but he works for NASCAR building race cars and doing pit crew. This is my high school. Winston-Salem Forsyth County has 14 high schools. This is one of the 14. We have about 1,900 students, and we were built 60 years ago and then renovated in 2014. So this is the newest building that was added to our campus. It's the only two-story building. The rest of our buildings are all one floor. We have 33 language groups represented on our campus. The most common are Spanish and Mandarin. We've got about 100 different courses students can choose from, a little more than 80 clubs, and lots and lots and lots of sports, pretty much anything you could think of. Our football team is back-to-back state champions, and so that's a pretty cool experience. Okay, why is it not letting me advance my slide? There we go. So I teach several courses. The first one is called NC Teacher Cadet. This is a program started in 1998, and the point of the program is to give high school students an opportunity to explore the option of going into teaching. And so they learn how to write lesson plans. They actually go into elementary and middle schools and teach classes. They have an opportunity to earn a lot of scholarships. And so out of my 22 years, I've got about 200 former cadets who are now teaching in our state, which is pretty cool. Then the second course that I teach is Advanced Placement Language and Composition. It's called AP. Students in America can take AP courses in high school to earn college credit, so that when they go to college, they've already gotten some classes out of the way. The course that I teach is the equivalent of what would be their English 111, the first English they would take as a college student. And they take a national exam in May of every year, and that is what determines whether or not they receive the credit. So the pictures that you see here, these are some of my AP students from when the pandemic first hit. Obviously, our schools shut down. We were not allowed to go to school. And so the picture at the bottom, I met my students at local parks and taught them outside because they still had to take that national exam. So I wanted them to have what they needed. So this is me taping instruction to the side of my car so that I could teach my students. I had them sit in parking spaces so that they were far enough apart. But that's the way we did school when we couldn't go in the buildings. And then my biggest course load is teaching English. Specifically, I teach 10th grade. So the way schools in North Carolina are set up, all of the students take the same thing. All the teachers don't have to teach the same material as far as specific authors. But all 9th graders take what's called a survey course. And so it introduces them to fiction versus nonfiction versus poetry. 10th grade, which is what I teach, is a survey of world literature. Our juniors study American Lit, and our 12th graders study European Lit. And then all 4 grade levels have reading and speaking standards as well that they have to do. So in my world literature course, the way the state has it set up, Unit 1 is African literature and early civilizations. And so some of the pieces that we teach are the Epic of Gilgamesh. And then we also teach the Holy Bible, and students do a comparison of like the flood stories. And so the flood that happened in Gilgamesh as opposed to the flood that is recorded in the book of Genesis. And then we also teach excerpts from the Quran. Our unit 2 is Indian literature. And I'm probably going to murder the names of these, but we teach the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita. Poems by Rumi are some of my students' favorites. I don't know if you guys have read any poetry by Rumi. There's one called Elephant in the Dark, which teaches cooperation. The basis behind the poem is all of these people go into a big building that has an elephant in it, and they've never seen an elephant, and it's dark. And so they touch different parts of the elephant. And one person comes out and says, oh, it's a fan animal because he touched the ears. And another one says, it's a pillar animal because he touches the leg. And the point of it at the end of the poem is if they would have just turned on a light and cooperated, they would have come to the correct conclusion. Another one that my students really identify with is called The Guest House. And it talks about how your emotions, positive or negative, are guests. And every day new guests arrive. Some of them you expect, some of them you don't expect. And sometimes it's necessary to take all the furniture out of your house, to sweep you completely emotionally clean in order for you to be able to appreciate those emotions. And so we spend a lot of time with Rumi. It's pretty cool. Our unit 3 is Asian literature. And so we look at the writings of Confucius. And then we also look at a story called The Pillow Book, which is nonfiction. It was written by some geishas at court about what it was like to live at the emperor's court. And so lots of beautiful imagery in The Pillow Book. Our unit 4 is Hispanic and Latin American literature. The one required text here is Don Quixote. And my students, we spend a lot of time here looking at kind of the psychology of Don Quixote. When it was written, Cervantes didn't know what dementia was. They didn't have a name for it. They just thought he was going crazy because he was living the stories that he was a literature professor, and he was living the stories that he had taught his whole life. And so we talk about kind of the process of dementia and what that looks like. And then our last unit is the Holocaust. And so we read Night by Elie Wiesel. And we also look at The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. We are required in our schools to do a film study. And so we look at The Boy in the Striped Pajamas and the choices the directors made in how they portrayed the Holocaust, how much violence they chose to include, where they may have made edits to keep it age appropriate, that sort of thing. And so in these units, there's lots of other literature that we do, lots of other writing, but these are kind of the basics. We also do what are called primary text, which are longer works, and we have lots and lots of options for these. So one that we started teaching this year is A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Beale. And excuse me, that is a memoir, so it's nonfiction, about his life as a boy soldier when the rebels took over in Sierra Leone in the late 1990s, and he lost his whole family in that tragedy and wound up being forced into being a boy soldier. And so the book walks through his time as a boy soldier and then his time in recovery once the United Nations and the Red Cross were able to pull him out, kind of his process toward healing. Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. If you guys are planning to go to university, I don't know what just happened. Let me figure out, hold on one second. It's because a phone call came in. Sorry about that, guys. If you guys are planning to go to university, then the 2 most alluded to works in any language are the Holy Bible and the Divine Comedy. Divine Comedy is a journey. It's a spiritual journey. So pretty much Dante wakes up at 35 and has this midlife crisis. He's like, I don't know, do I believe what I believe because the Catholic Church tells me to, or because I've actually thought about it? And so it kind of walks you through his thought processes. Sound of Waves is an Asian text. And then of course, Night is Holocaust. Escape from Camp 13 is a Korean text. It is about the only prisoner ever born in a North Korean concentration camp to successfully leave. Kite Runner and 1,000 Splendid Suns are both by Khaled Hosseini, which is an Indian author, and they are set in India. I use these to explore gender roles. In Kite Runner, it features a teenage male protagonist, and his father is very high up in the community before 9/11 and all that happens. And so it explores kind of that caste structure because he has a servant who he later finds out is his half brother. And then with 1,000 Splendid Suns, it is about two female protagonists, one of whom is married off to a man that she has no interest in, and he's abusive. And so it's about her journey to protect her children. Things Fall Apart is Chinua Achebe. That is African, set in Nigeria. And then Born a Crime is a recent text that we started. That is, his name just went right out of my head. Noah is the author, and he is actually a comedian now. He does a talk show and is a comedian as well. And so those are some of the longer works that we have the option to choose from. And with those, we are looking at, in world literature, how literature from all different places share common themes. So you guys, where you are, have to face some of the same things that we face, and that's the beauty of literature. And so some of the ones that we look at are obviously dealing with the Holocaust. How do you maintain your humanity when you're being treated as less than human? We look at the struggle to maintain faith, kind of that journey. I tell my students, you're at that age where you start questioning, do I believe what I believe because it's what my parents have taught me and it's how I've been raised? Or have I actually studied it and I know it and I believe it because it makes sense to me? It's what what resonates with me. Self-identity, again, you guys are at that age where you have to start kind of thinking those next steps, that futuristic thinking. Am I headed to university? Am I going to a workforce? Am I going to continue studies in outside of a university setting? I don't know if you guys have trade schools, is what we call them here. And then also military service is an option in a lot of places. And so kind of that figuring out who you are, religious freedom versus cultural norms, looking at the dynamics of relationships, the influence of your family versus your friends versus your culture. Obviously, freedom versus oppression. My students have been following the situation in the Ukraine very closely, and kind of setting that up against some of the literature that we've read. What are we seeing that are commonalities? And then diversity versus assimilation. So those are just some of the themes that we look at as we move through the literature to try to figure out how we are connected to populations across the globe. Even though we're in vastly different places, we eat different things, we go to different religious establishments, we use different money, we all essentially deal with a lot of the same things when it comes down to the heart of it. How we build relationships with our family and with our friends and all of that. Then your teacher sent me some questions from you guys at 1:30 this morning. I was not awake. So I hopped on before getting on the Zoom to try to find some of those answers for you.
Sorry to interrupt you. Actually, these questions actually that I forward to you are going to ask my students right now, if you allow them. Yeah.
Absolutely, please do.
Yeah. So who is going to ask the first question? Jagadish, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jagdish. I am studying in 7th grade at ZP Sailapuram. My hobbies are reading books, playing games, and watching TV. My future ambition is to be an English teacher. I feel privileged to speak with you. Can I ask you a question, ma'am?
Yes, you may.
What is something you can only get in North Carolina, ma'am?
Something you can only get in North Carolina is cheer wine. And that's that top picture up there that says drink cheerwine. It is a cherry soda that is made in North Carolina, and they do not distribute it anywhere else. Even if you go just an hour down to South Carolina, can't buy cheerwine. You can only buy it in North Carolina.
So that's quite interesting, I think. Sai Surya, it's your turn.
Thank you. Hi, ma'am. I am Sai Surya. I am 12 years old. I am studying 7th grade. My hobbies are reading books, playing games, and watching TV. My future ambition is to become a police officer. Can I pose a question, ma'am?
Yes.
Could you please explain about the school system in your state?
The school system. So I've kind of told you a little bit about school in North Carolina. So you have 13 years of school, kindergarten through grade 12. And then once you finish grade 12, you can either go to a community college where you get a 2-year degree called an associate's degree, or you can go to university and get a 4-year degree. And that just is like the basics. And then as with my own education, I went back for another 2 years and got my master's degree. And I am about 18 months away from finishing my PhD, which is a doctoral degree. And that's the highest degree that you can get in our country.
Tedipia, do you have any question?
Yes, sir. Hi, ma'am. My name is Teacher. I have completed my 6th grade. My hobbies are reading books and playing games. My life ambition is to become a software engineer. Can I ask you a question, ma'am?
Yes.
What is North Carolina state animal?
What is North Carolina state animal?
Yes, ma'am.
I actually could not find that. I found our state bird is the cardinal, which is the bright red bird that's up there at the top. And I was Googling the other one, and then it was time for me to hop on with you guys. So I'm looking on my cell phone. I'm not ignoring. I want to see if I can find that. It's interesting. I know we have a state fish. So the gray squirrel is what it says is our state animal. And let me tell you, we also have flying squirrels here in North Carolina. When I was in college, I liked to sit outside to study. And so I would sit outside in what's called the quad. It's this big grassy area with a lot of trees. And if you got too loud when you were out there, the squirrels would throw things at you. They would fly and they would throw things at you. And so it is, they're very interesting. They can be very aggressive.
Next question. Who is going to ask the next question?
Sir, can I?
Yes, Nagalakshmi. So, Mrs. Wallace, if you don't mind, could you please stop sharing so that my students can ask you the questions directly? Yes.
Yes.
Hi, ma'am. This is Nagalakshmi. I have completed my 8th grade. My hobbies are reading books and playing games. My long-term goal is to become an English teacher. I'm honored to speak with you. Can I ask one question, ma'am?
Yes.
What is the bird of Carolina? What
she
is
say-
the bird of North Carolina?
The bird,
Yes, ma'am.
that's the cardinal. And so the cardinals, the brown ones are the females, the bright red ones are the males. And so they are very, very pretty birds. I actually have bird feeders in front of my house and can sit and watch them. They dart back and forth after each other all the time.
Okay, thank you. Sai Nagastri.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Saina Gastri, a 7th grade student. I'm proudly delighted to take an opportunity to interact with you. Ma'am, I would like to pose a question. Can I pose?
Yes.
What did North Carolina invent?
There are lots of things. So North Carolina is the home of the first flight. The Wilbur brothers created the first plane and flew at the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And then in addition to Cheerwine being North Carolina, Pepsi is also specific to North Carolina. It was created here. So all your Pepsi soft drinks and Mount Olive pickles were also created in North Carolina.
That's quite interesting. Bhagyasri, do you have any question?
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
My name is Bhagyasri. I have completed my 8th grade. My hobbies are reading books and playing games. My future ambition is to become a doctor. Shall I ask one question, ma'am?
Yes.
What soft drink was invented in North Carolina?
The soft drink were Cheerwine and Pepsi. Were both created here in North Carolina.
Yes. Any more questions from the students? Shruti, over to you.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am. Myself, Shruti. I have completed my 7th grade. My hobbies are drawing pictures and reading books. May I pose you a question?
Yes.
What is North Carolina known for?
What are we known for?
Yes, ma'am.
Our geography. So we have the mountains and we have beaches. And so whether you want to stay where it's nice and cool and you can get fresh apples, or whether you want to stay where it's hot and eat seafood, you can do both of those in North Carolina. We also have more historically Black colleges and universities than any other state in the United States. And so we have a very rich education system here. And we are also known for what's called the Research Triangle Park. It runs from our state capital, which is Raleigh, through the Triad of North Carolina, which is where I live, all the way down to Charlotte. And it is, we have big companies like Google who have research facilities there, but our biggest is medical research. So we have Duke University and Wake Forest and NC State. All of them have very prominent schools of medicine. And so lots and lots of medical research happens in that Research Triangle Park area.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Wallace, I have a question from my side. So you have been teaching world literature, and especially my point is, so Bhagavad Gita is one of the most popular book in India, especially for Hindus. So what do you say about this book? Because we are so curious to know your maybe your views about this book, even Mahabharata also.
We look at excerpts from them that deal with creation, because that's the one theme that goes through all of our cultures. You know, when we look at the Holy Bible, Christians have one point of how things, or one view of how things were created. Then you look at cultures that tend more towards evolution, and we look at the relationship between different faiths and their creators or their gods, whether they're monotheistic or polytheistic, and what are the common characteristics across cultures when they look at their gods, as far as the relationship between the creator and the creation.
And there is one more question that I have. In India, we have 3 different faiths, Muslims, Christians, and as well as Hindus. So you have gone through all their 3 holy books. So what are the commonalities that you have identified in these 3 books?
The commonalities would be prayer, would be one. And we talk about the different expectations of prayer. In some cultures, individuals don't pray their own words. They repeat scripture that's relevant to whatever the issue is that they're dealing with. In other cultures, they're encouraged to just speak to their creator or their whichever God it is they're praying to about whatever their issue is. We look at the call to charitable work. In some faiths, charitable work is central to their idea of salvation. In other works, it's not. And so we look at kind of what are the concepts we see in all of the faiths, and how do some of them work together, or how are they different? And the importance that each faith puts on their holy book, and the authenticity of their holy books.
So thank you for your explanation. And I have one more last question. So how do you think that the old literature, of course, is something that all students across the globe need to read and need to study, but in the current era, due to some competitions, due to some other reasons, most of the boards are not actually concentrating on the world literature. They are giving only importance to the core subjects like physics and mathematics and some other subjects. So as a teacher of world literature, could you please explain what exactly these boards across the globe should introduce in their curriculum? So how important the world literature it is for a student to learn? That's my question.
I think it's essential for students to be exposed to cultures through literature, especially when some students may never leave their homes. Like, we have students who were born in North Carolina, they've been raised here, they'll go to college here, they'll work here, they won't ever travel, they'll never leave. And while they're not leaving, people from other cultures are coming in. And so the only way to understand other cultures, appreciate other cultures, and to be able to understand the impact other cultures have on us is to study other cultures. And, we go through these cycles where, 9/11 happened, and that stigmatized certain groups of people. And then, like during World War II, when Japan bombed the US, that stigmatized certain cultures of people. And under former President Trump's administration, the wall, that stigmatized groups of people. And if the only thing students ever learn are those stereotypes and that stigmatizing, they don't see the beauty of what all of these cultures have to offer. The literature, the art, the music, and how culture is so beneficial. And that's why, with those universal themes, helping students to understand that student in India, that student in Japan, that student in Korea, that student in Mexico, they have to make identity decisions as well. They have to decide what they believe. And they have to decide, like you guys, I think I had somebody who wanted to be a police officer, somebody who wanted to be a doctor. Those are the same things that my students want to be. And so ultimately, we're all living the same life, just in different places with some tweaks. And we have to understand each other and those differences so that we can be responsible. And ultimately, I tell my students, I use a verse out of Deuteronomy in the Old Testament that says, teach your children these things lest history repeat itself. Understanding other people and their cultures and learning to appreciate them is how we stop things like the Holocaust. It's how we stop things like what's happening in Ukraine and what happened in Rwanda and countless other places. Understanding culture is how we stop all of the nonsense.
Yes, thank you so much, Mrs. Wallace, for your time. So before I wrap up this session, I think I request you to give a final message. But before that, could you please share your favorite book? Because since you are a teacher of literature, and you must have some favorite books in your mind. So could you please share one of your best favorite books?
My favorite books. Well, I am a Christian, so the Holy Bible is very important to me.
Okay.
I love Divine Comedy. Goodness. That's a very hard question because I like literature from all over the place. I think those would be two of my favorites. I don't know. That's a really hard question.
Okay, thank you so much. And could you please give a message, a final message to my students?
So what I teach my kiddos is life is about end games. So several of you said you've completed 7th grade, you've completed 8th grade. So what's your next end game? For me, my next end game is finishing my doctorate. So I will be Dr. Stephanie Wallace. But you move from one end game to the next. Always have a goal, always know where you're going. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't achieve a goal, that it's too hard. It's gonna be hard. Anything worth doing is gonna be hard. But you guys are who we're turning the world over to. Ultimately, we're eventually going to get old and crazy, and you guys have to take over. And so always have a goal, always move towards that goal, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. The biggest way to accomplish any goal is to read. Read everything you can get your hands on. Knowledge is power, and there's knowledge in books.
Thank you so much, Wallace, for your wonderful message. I think your message is truly inspirational, not only to my students, but also for me as a teacher. So thank you so much for your time and valuable time. So students, please turn your cameras on and give a final look to our guest teacher and say bye and have a great day, Mrs. Wallace.
You do as well. Bye, guys.